Hello everyone, welcome back to Scruffy Tales and a more serious tone of video. Let's get into it. And in this video we will try and analyze some footage from Ukraine that seems to be going viral. And I've seen it, the full length of it, and since it's popping up in discussions here and there, I figured why not share my views on it. And I will not show any moving images, won't show any of the shootouts or the violence that occurs when combat is taking place. So this is just going to be an analysis of the situation, just like when going over a battlefield from the Napoleonic era or Vietnam, World War II, and so on. Right, so the video kicks off with an intense firefight. We start inside of a Ukrainian vehicle. A bit unsure what type of vehicle. It appears to have gun ports, roof hatches, but the rear end is a ramp, and I believe BMPs usually have doors that swing open, so I'm not sure what this vehicle is, to be honest, but that's besides the point. Mechanized infantry, armored infantry, whatever the case, they storm out and instantly open fire into a tree line. So they have moved up to the enemy, and as soon as they step outside, they are in combat. This is exactly how you use mechanized infantry, and the soldiers act accordingly. They step outside and immediately engage the enemy with in what we call in Sweden eldstöt. You just pour fire onto the enemy location. You don't know where the enemy is, you just shoot in the general direction and suppress the enemy. And as the video progresses, the squad spreads out in a line, and then while continuously dumping rounds into the tree line, they then advance into the woods. And they gain ground in the woods, they find firing positions, they shout orders, they communicate, they push in towards the enemy, they spot Russians, and they begin to focus fire on the enemy. And then it appears as if indirect fire is aimed at their location. Ukrainian, Russian, I don't know. But the Ukrainians, they flinch as mortar rounds begin to strike the area, and they get on the ground flat to avoid getting hit by shrapnel. The Ukrainians then move on. They find foxholes, bunkers, trenches, and they clear them out with grenades. They open fire with at full auto to just clear out whatever they can to make sure there are no enemies left. And then they start finding wounded Russians and Russians that have surrendered. And the wounded Russians are provided help and medical care, and Russians that have surrendered are have their weapons taken from them, and they're processed as prisoners of war. And this is all according to the Geneva Convention. A soldier that has surrendered has to be treated fairly and basically like your own soldiers or like a civilian. A surrendered soldier must be given care, and you as the captor, you are fully responsible for that the enemy soldier, the enemy prisoner of war is kept alive and kept healthy. And this is what we see the Ukrainians are doing. They're obviously agitated. It's the enemy, obviously, but you know, they treat them with with the respect you might imagine trying to kill each other only moments before. And yeah, there are a bunch of rules concerning dealing with the prisoners of war. You have to treat them fairly and with humanity, and you're not allowed to commit torture, obviously, but you're not allowed to put them in stressful positions, you know, like you see in these when they have tryouts for special forces. None of that. And you're not allowed to threaten them or insult them or you know, hold them up for display for the public and stuff like that. And it's interesting that a prisoner of war may keep his helmet, his body armor, personal belongings, identification papers or dog tags, and equipment to eat. That is what he's allowed to keep. Anything else, you're free to take from him. It doesn't say food. If he has food on him, you can take it, apparently. But fork and if he has a small kitchen and stuff like that, that he is entitled to keeping as a prisoner of war. And from what I can tell, Ukrainians are doing their part as proper soldiers in this situation when the Russians are surrendering and when they come across Russians who are wounded. Now, there is this very specific incident that has made this video famous and is the reason why it's going viral. And the guy in the lower right picture here, to the right side, the guy with the blue tape, he's a Ukrainian and he's talking to a Russian. And that Russian was present at the very tricky situation that we'll be coming to next. And so he's right there as that happens. I just want to show you that after this very difficult situation, that guy is still alive and well, and he's being treated fairly, and the Ukrainians are talking to him and making sure he understands the situation. So let's not move on to this very difficult situation. So what happens is that the Ukrainians are securing the trenches, the bunkers, and the foxholes. And they're being told that they have a wounded Russian off in the woods. So a Ukrainian soldier is being guided over there by, I believe this, by the man I pointed out in the previous picture. And so he's taken to this Russian that he finds on the ground. He talks to him. He bends down and removes the Russian's weapon from him. And removes the weapon, puts it to the side, and then they talk some more, and then the Ukrainian gets agitated. He panics because he perceives that the Russian has a grenade ready in his hand, presumably hidden under the body somehow. So the Russian is essentially has made himself into a booby trap. And here comes the tricky part. The Ukrainian, who is also filming this, panics, calls out grenade, backs away, opens fire at just a couple of meters distance, full auto into this Russian, and then he hightails it out of there, screaming, shouting, grenade, 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 and everyone just bails. And then you can hear in the background the grenade. You hear the grenade pop off in the background. And they return and they find the Russian now very much dead. And the video continues after that. So this is the really tricky situation that has made the video in question go viral. You have a wounded soldier on his belly, and a Russian soldier in Ukraine moves up, removes the weapon. Next step is to make sure that the Russian is secure and no longer a threat. So let's say he didn't see the grenade, and let's say there is no grenade. Then the Ukrainian has to kneel down and start pat the Russian down and make sure he is a proper prisoner of war and that he no longer intends to fight, right? If he no longer has any weapons, he's no longer a threat, and he is compliant, he becomes a prisoner of war, and they can treat him for his wounds, and they can secure him and take him for questioning or what have you. That is if he's compliant and no longer fighting and no longer has a weapon and is no longer a threat. The Ukrainian in this situation believes the Russian is still a threat. He sees a grenade, or he believes there is a grenade, and he acts. Now this is a combat situation, and you have a split second to make a decision. Make the wrong choice and you die, or your friends die. And I mean, we are sitting at home far away from the chaos of combat and second guessing this guy. It's a bit rich, but so he perceives there's a grenade. He perceives there's a threat. And that means to him, this Russian is still a combatant, an active combatant. He is armed and dangerous and ready to do damage to Ukrainian soldiers. Based on that, he is a valid target. Now, was this a legit kill? That is up to others to decide. This will probably be investigated by The Hague or by the Ukrainian military and their military police, I'm sure, since it's so well documented by this body cam and spread all over the internet. But that aside, assuming that this soldier has no malice or malicious intent, in that moment, he believes that that Russian is an active combatant, a soldier, an enemy soldier holding a dangerous weapon. He was correct in open fire. And we also in the video hear the grenade go boom as everyone runs away. And it's important to remember that there was a second Russian involved in this incident, the guy I pointed out previously, and nothing happened to him. No one shot him to cover it up or anything. And they released this video. They could have, if this was a murder, it might still be considered a murder by the military police and a war crime tribunal, but to their mind, they acted on a threat and felt, yes, we can release this footage. So, and the guy who is an eyewitness was kept alive and was treated fairly, and they talked to him and explained, this happened, and and then they remove stuff from him just to make sure other Ukrainians aren't agitated or afraid that he too might have a grenade on him and stuff like that. So it feels like this Ukrainian soldier acted on a situation that he perceived was a direct threat and killed the enemy. Yeah. So after that incident, things happen, it goes on, they check out the stuff. They find this old Russian, 60 years old, a convict who had signed a contract to serve 6 months in Ukraine and then get scot-free from his jail sentence. And it appears that he was hoping to get back to his family and meet his granddaughters and stuff like that. And I think he got lucky. Signing that contract might have been the best thing he did, since he ended up as a prisoner of war. I don't think Ukraine will treat him poorly. He's an old man who surrendered, who didn't put up a fight and accepted his fate as a prisoner of war. So he went from a Russian prison to a Ukrainian prison, and I think he's better off in Ukraine, to be honest. And towards the end of the video, they come across some Russian rations, and they find a big box full of juice cartons, and then they start handing those out to the Russian prisoners, so to keep them hydrated and make sure that to ease their situation. Yes, they're prisoner of wars, but everything's all right. They're going to be taken care of, and they don't have to fear reprisals from the Russian army or anything like that. And yeah, the Russians who surrendered in this video are far better off being prisoners in Ukraine than serving in Putin's army. I can tell you that much. And that's basically it, since there's no point in showing the footage. I mean, there's not much else I can do than show you these stills and explain what's taking place in the video, and try and explain what is happening in that crucial moment when that Ukrainian believes he's faced with a deadly threat. And he has to act on it. He has to act on it. I can tell you what we did when I was a conscript, when we were training to clear out trenches. The instructors had filled blue coveralls with straw, and placed them all along this trench line as we were moving forward with live ammo to represent dead or potentially dead enemy soldiers. That was the awkward part of it, because it wasn't that we were supposed to double check if they were alive or anything like that, so we had to treat them like you're supposed to do according to Geneva Conventions. Now, what we were taught, this is 20 years ago, by the way, what we were taught was that every man that was about to walk past one of these dummies was supposed to put 2 rounds into that dummy. Every man in the squad was supposed to put 2 rounds into this body and then move on. And the point was to obviously not, so that we wouldn't have to worry about having a live enemy behind us as we advanced through the trench, which makes sense. The problem is, though, you have an obligation to actually treat wounded enemy soldiers if you come across them, and if they are if they are unable to fight back, and you're not allowed to kill enemy soldiers willy-nilly, as weird as it may sound, and you're not allowed to desecrate corpses, dead bodies. So if 2 or 3 guys have shot 2 rounds each into a body, the fifth and sixth and the following guys, they are desecrating the body at that point. So at the time we didn't question it. We were like 18, 19, 20 years old. We were just doing what the officers told us to do, and we were like, oh yeah, this is how it's done. And that's what we did. So now you're older, and thinking back, I think the officers might have done things a bit their own way there, but yeah, so I don't know what my point is here. The thing is that the Ukrainian soldier in this clip clearly thought he had a real threat ahead of him, and he had to act, unlike what we were training for when we were simply, desecrating bodies just to make sure we wouldn't get shot in the back. But weird anecdote. Not sure if it applies, but there you go. Told it anyway. So that's all I have for you, and I hope it made some sense. And if you see this video, I hope you can understand what's going on a bit more. And with that, go from headset shut down. Just as I was about to say, go march, Ukraine, give them hell. And I'll see you guys in the next one.